Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a pretty packed agenda, so we're going to get started right away. My name is Ari Spence, and I'm the education lead at Pain BC. And it is my honor to be hosting today's panel with Colby, Grace, and Trevor. We were also supposed to have Vicki Waldron here today, but unfortunately she was unable to make it. But we definitely thank her for her contributions to this panel. First off, as always, we want to gratefully acknowledge that Pain BC is located on the traditional, unceded, and stolen territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We know that people may be joining from across the country today, so we hope you take a moment to reflect upon whose territories you work and live. Okay, so now, as I mentioned, a very quick overview of the connection between substance use, overdose, and chronic pain. This might not be new information for many of you, and just note that a lot of this is going to be BC specific. So as we all know, the biopsychosocial nature of pain requires a multimodal, holistic approach to care. And for many people, they'll respond well to non-pharmacological treatments and non-opioid medications. However, some people may still require the addition of opioid medications to manage their pain. Unfortunately, many people living with pain experience stigma due to the complex intersection of pain and substances used to manage their pain, including prescribed substances. Additionally, many but not all people living with pain also experience trauma, and this is sometimes connected to both their pain and the substances used to manage their pain. Prescribing and using opioids for pain management has become a very contentious issue, especially during the ongoing drug toxicity crisis in Canada. The origins of the drug toxicity crisis and history of its connection to pain management in Canada are complex. In BC, research has shown that the drug toxicity crisis is not being driven by prescription opioids. Instead, primarily the cause of the drug poisoning in BC is a toxic street drug supply, which is laced with illicit fentanyl, and too few safe alternatives for people who use drugs to avoid this. The overdose crisis has taken the lives of more than 6,500 British Columbians and more than 17,000 Canadians since 2016. Many of those who died have had several things in common. They were mostly male, a significant number worked in construction and supporting industries, and more than half were living with physical pain. This is the reason for today's webinar. So going back to the topic of stigma, unfortunately, the false idea that the overdose crisis in BC is being driven by opioid prescribing has led to prescribing policy changes that have reduced access to opioid medications for some people who relied on them. In some cases, this has led to people with pain to turn to the street drug market to manage their pain, which, due to the aforementioned poison supply, is a very dangerous option. Furthermore, research has shown that people living with pain face not only the stigma associated with chronic pain, but also that of having a substance use disorder, regardless of whether or not they actually have a substance use disorder. We don't have time to watch this video, but if you're interested in learning more about the stigma associated with pain and substance use, I highly recommend this video called Beyond Stigma from the Subject Matter Health Research Lab. And I've pasted the link in the chat to this video so you can watch it after. All right, well, with that, we will turn things over to the panelists to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Ari. Hi, everyone. I'm Colby Young. I am the program lead for a project called the Tailgate Toolkit. Now, this project emerged in response to the 2018 BC Coroner's Service Report that really showcased that our industry, construction and trades, is overrepresented amongst those lost. So in partnership with the Vancouver Island Construction Association and Island Health, we developed this project in 2021. And it's an education and awareness campaign. Our goal is to provide members of the construction industry, both employees and employers, with the tools and understanding to address this issue in their workplaces. Now, that really comes down to reducing stigma, promoting help seeking, and providing support. So we've had the pleasure of working on this project since 2021. As of 2022, we are provincially funded and have staff across the province who provide this education.
Thank you. Now let's go to Trevor.
Yes, thank you. My name is Trevor Beckman, and I work for a company called SCACL, or Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living. And I work as their maintenance person. And SCACL itself, their mission is to provide people with mental disabilities or person-centered support and opportunities to thrive in the community. And as their maintenance person, I coordinate all of the construction that needs to be done in our houses and homes here. And in that aspect, I get to meet a lot of people, people like myself with chronic pain that work in the industry, or myself. I mean, I don't really work in the industry, but I do suffer with chronic pain on a daily basis. And I'm in a unique position to see it and know what it's all about.
And last but not least, Grace.
Thanks so much, Ari. So I'm Grace Tiersma. I'm the research project coordinator for the De Novo Treatment Center. So De Novo is a drug and alcohol treatment service, and we're operated as a partnership between the management and unionized construction workers of Ontario. Like I said, we're located in Huntsville, and we're a 35-day program that is private to the building and construction trades. So our clients are actually able to come to us for free through our funding model, which is fantastic. So where I come in is De Novo received funding to conduct research projects now for the past 2 years. Last year, we conducted a project trying to understand some of the causes and drivers of some higher rates of addiction and suicide within the construction trades. And I'll get into those a little bit later. And then right now, we are also shifting gears a little bit and trying to further understand recovery for tradespeople. So after our clients graduate our program and go back home, back to their lives, their jobs, everything like that, we're trying to understand some protective and risk factors. So that's what De Novo is all about, and we're very blessed to be able to do the work that we do.
Thanks, everyone. All right, our first question is actually going to be for Trevor. So Trevor, I would love to hear about your experience with chronic pain and work, your past experience and how you came to be at your current job.
Yes. Past experiences, I've worked many different jobs all over the place, from working in an airport to driving truck to working as a garbage man. And that particular work there, working as a garbage man, is the one that injured me, where I basically ruined my shoulder from all the heavy lifting, and consequently needed 2 different surgeries and about 2 years of physio to get back to being able to use my arm, but at a very limited capacity. And now where I am here, working with SCACL, gives me the unique opportunity to still work and be a functioning person in society. Whereas if I was still trying to work doing jobs, say as in construction, my body just would not be able to handle any type of physical work. My pain on a daily basis really keeps me from enjoying a lot of things that people take for granted nowadays. Just even going out for a walk, to me, can be physical, pain-wise. But in a working sense, every type of job you do nowadays requires some type of movement to physical work. These things, of course, limit anyone with chronic pain. And this position that I'm in with SCACL has really helped me, because I've got an employer that actually understands my physical limitations to do with chronic pain, They understand that if I need to take a day off, I can take a day off. Or if I need to work from home, being that I might have some computer work to do, I can stay home, sit with my heating pads and try and relax and work on being a functional person in society. Whereas, there are so many jobs out there that especially in the construction industry, where you're so physical and people expect you to be able to do work, and you might look like a normal person, but you physically cannot do any of the work that is tasked to you. And again, that's where, my employer right now is great, because I coordinate things that need to be done. And if I need to, there are small jobs within our organization. We use our own person served to take them out, and they can perform these small tasks that need to be done to give them meaningful employment, to fix little things around here. But as per construction work, like my body can't handle that, any type of that work anymore, just because of physical pain.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that your current employer is so supportive and accommodating of you, and hopefully that, if there's any employers who are listening, that they can kind of take a page out of your employer's book and kind of implement some of those things, because yeah, they're very lucky to have you and all of the skills and experience that you bring. So
yeah, I mean, like, just because someone has chronic pain doesn't mean they can't still be a functioning part of society and do some type of job, even in the construction industry, where, I mean, I sit on the sidelines, but I hire now all of the contractors for any type of work that needs to be done around here.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, and we will now move to the next question, but Trevor, feel free to jump back in and add points at any time. The next question is going to be for Grace. So from your perspective, what has been the impact of undermanaged chronic pain and or substance use in the construction industry?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ari. I'm just going to do this. Perfect. So being that I am from the substance use treatment service, one of the biggest issues that we've seen because of undermanaged chronic pain in the construction industry is addiction and substance abuse problems. Right now, similar to Ontario, I am aware that BC is also going through an opioid crisis, and some of the same trends that you spoke about earlier, Ari, are also reflected in Ontario, where higher numbers of men, those in the construction trades, and people living with pain or mental illnesses are passing away of overdoses. So recently, De Novo conducted research that aimed to try and understand some of the reasons for these higher rates of substance use and mental health concerns within the construction industry. And I'm not sure if you can see the percentages on the side, but the first one that we found was actually work habits and schedule, which includes the physical pain due to the kind of work involved and not being able to rest your body completely and take care of yourself physically. So physical pain alone can be a reason for someone to use substances, but substance use and mental illness go hand in hand. As you can see on the slide there, mental health issues were number 3 of our study. So for example, people with a mental illness are actually twice as likely to have a substance use problem when compared to the general population. And previous research has also established that higher rates of mental distress are associated with both musculoskeletal pain and more work-related injuries. And there's also a really strong link between having substantive mental distress and these increases in injuries among workers. And the theory being that mental distress can influence safety behavior on site, which inadvertently would affect the injury rate. And so oftentimes the injury or the solution to these injuries is not rest and time off and time to heal. Oftentimes it's an opioid prescription so that individuals can get back to work right away, not just from an organizational standpoint needing workers, but individuals also have bills to pay and they need to go to work and make money to support themselves and or their families. So in 2020, researchers actually found that the odds of prescription opioid use among injured construction workers more than tripled when compared to construction workers that didn't have an injury. And so this can be one of the reasons for why we see such high rates of opioid use and opioid overdoses in the construction occupations and other working groups, similar to what Trevor mentioned, where doing hard physical labor involved in those types of occupations. We do know that in the construction industry and these working groups that there's high rates of injury, trauma, and stress related to that job. And there also might be a lack of resources to address those issues. So this can also lead to prescribing opioids more often if there's no other way for individuals to manage their pain. Like I said earlier, if they have to get back to work to financially support themselves. And like I mentioned earlier, the opioid crisis has been hitting Ontario quite similarly to how it's been hitting the British Columbia. And I just wanted to share some really concerning statistics from the pandemic. So since the onset of the pandemic in Ontario, we've actually had an 80% increase in the number of opioid-related deaths. In the first 6 months of the pandemic, we lost 50,155 years of life due to opioid toxicity deaths. And in Ontario, overall, there was 2,426 opioid-related deaths in Ontario in 2020. And among those individuals who were employed at the time, 1 in 3 was a construction worker. So clearly, there is a very substantive link between chronic pain, working in the construction industry, and substance use. And like I just said too, these trends are very similar. Like this 1 in 3 construction workers, the rate in BC is actually 1 in 5. So we're all very similar going through this crisis together. And so solving them will of course take collaborative effort as well.
Thanks, Grace. Colby or Trevor, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd love to add something if I can. I just want to speak a little bit more to kind of some of the BC statistics. I know earlier, Ari, you had mentioned that we lost 6,500 people since the public health emergency. That number is actually a little bit out of date. This year, we've crossed the line of 10,000 people. So in BC, in 6 years, over 10,000 people lost to drug poisoning. And of that, of those who were employed at that time, or at the time of their death, over half were in construction in BC. The most recent death review panel from the BC Coroner Service report puts at 52% of those employed were in construction trades, heavy equipment operation. And to put that into context, when we look at other areas of employment, construction being absolutely number 1, sales and service is number 2, but at only 27%. So it is a massive discrepancy, really pointing to a situation that we have in our industry. Now, this 55% of those employed, when we look at that applied to everybody who experienced or was lost to a drug poisoning during this, that's where we start to see that 1 in 5 number. So we're looking at about 18.6% of drug poisoning deaths from 2016 to 2022, roughly, are members of our industry. When we take that to that over 10,000, we're seeing over 2,000 construction workers lost in 6 years. And that is something that we can't, we can't look the other way on in terms of how much this drug poisoning crisis has impacted our industry. So with that in mind, in addition to this incredible loss of human life, we also see difficulty in terms of morale within the industry. So many people that we've had the opportunity to speak to through our project have lost somebody, a coworker, a colleague, an employee, a friend. Many of us, I'm sure at this point, have lost somebody or have some connection to this. Now, with that said, morale, institutional knowledge is lost, difficulties with staffing, collective trauma, having gone through this. It is an incredibly difficult thing that I think we are still finding, especially within the industry, we're trying to distance ourselves from. And this is when we're really, I'm sure as we'll come across through this conversation, we have to start talking about, we have to start addressing it. There's work that needs to be done. And yeah, I think Gracie hit everything that I would want to say too. So.
Thank you for providing those updated statistics. Yeah, truly staggering numbers for sure. And that collective trauma piece really kind of, hits home, especially like I feel like we've heard that phrase a lot with the other public health emergency of the pandemic as well, right? And what does it mean to kind of be, working in the construction industry and have both of these happening at the same time and have, double the trauma. Okay, so maybe we'll go over actually back to you, Colby, for the next question, which is about the barriers and challenges of addressing this issue. What are some of the things that you've seen kind of working in this or supporting this industry that you think are obstacles to doing this work?
Yeah, so I'd like to speak to this in a few parts because we have a number of different stakeholders engaged in this. We have our employers, owners, leaders, we have boots on the ground, many of whom we often think of being the most at risk. So with regards to the challenges and barriers that we see, let's look at the employers, because there are some very valid challenges that are inherent within our industry. I'm going to do my best to speak to chronic pain as well as substance use. When it comes to addressing this, because of the nature of how construction companies actually get contracts or bid on projects, it requires that they provide really the lowest estimate in terms of cost and time. And of course, this creates stresses across the board and doesn't allow for a whole lot of staff changeover, education and training at times can be lacking. And truthfully, even safety can take a bit of a hit. With that in mind, there is often an unwillingness from employers to provide accommodation when they see that a staff member may be dealing with a problem such as substance use or chronic pain, both of which have very significant and real impacts in terms of the work, in terms of safety, in terms of liability for that company. However, because we range in terms of company size, and working with different construction workers or sub-trades, a lot of that, many employers can really turn a blind eye and get away with it, get away with not addressing it. And they have valid reasons not to from a company and profit perspective. But there's also the very invalid things such as stigma. Now, stigma, judgment, or negative perspectives when it comes to substance use or chronic pain is probably our biggest challenge, right? It is our cultural understanding. Often this is a social perspective that can be really difficult to overcome. Now, that's the work that we're trying to do with our project. We're trying to increase that understanding, provide strategies to reduce stigma on the on the work site, so that we can get to the point of promoting help seeking, because that is the issue that we're overcoming. Now, stigma is, of course, perpetuated in many ways. Something that we often see within the construction industry is this the culture of masculinity, whether you want to call that toxic masculinity, traditional masculinity, or we can even put more broadly as toughness, a culture of toughness, right? We are expected to overcome pain. We are expected to overcome whether that's mental health or physical. So how do we get past this? We know that when it comes to the drug toxicity crisis, this is an issue that is absolutely a male-dominated issue, and accounting for about 80% of drug poisoning deaths. And our industry is about 90-95% men. So we're seeing this concentration. So stigma, masculinity, these are things that we do have to break down because they are presenting the largest barrier. And of course, we have to shift the culture away from driving towards, well, profit, I suppose, but incorporating that willingness to really invest in our staff. Because that is another cultural point of employers not understanding that though this may be considered a personal issue, we are in a place to address it. We are making contact with our staff up to or more than 40 hours a week. We may be one of their few supports, especially when an industry like ours can be so isolating, working on distant projects or in camps. We have to be putting the work in, and we're seeing with our last question here, how much it is impacting our industry. The effort has to be put in, the work has to be done. With that said, what are some of the barriers that we see with employees? Well, of course, stigma, the lack of help seeking, masculine, that all carries over. But as Grace kind of mentioned in your last point, we are seeing issues with financial hardship. The stress that comes with taking time off, either to pursue recovery or to take time to heal in terms of physical pain. So we get caught in a cycle of maybe taking short leave, say for an injury, coming back, not fully recovered simply because we don't have the financial means to expand that time. Or we're self-medicating because we can't even afford that initial time. So, we need to increase our understanding of how we can better address these issues, especially chronic pain, which is so poorly understood by many in terms of the scope of how folks are affected, and how to actually address it. Because often what we see too on the worksite is that stigma against chronic pain, the idea that somebody is simply complaining to get out of work. So with that said, that's the work that we have to start doing. It's a cultural shift. And I believe the only kind of, in our industry, pain is something that we expect. Pain is a part of it. We're all going to experience pain through the work, but living with pain is not expected. And that's where we need to change the conversation, because often we celebrate pain within this industry. If you can work through it, it's a sign of strength. It's a sign of commitment, dedication, and being able to tough it out. But to live with it, that's where things get incredibly problematic. Aside from those kind of internal, institutional, and personal barriers, we need better access to healthcare. And we need healthcare that properly understands both substance use and chronic pain, which still continues to be relatively misunderstood, and within healthcare as well, highly stigmatized. So I will end my answer there.
Thank you. That was a fantastic answer, and you touched on so many really great points. I'd love to turn it over to Trevor and Grace for any additional thoughts.
Yeah, now I have thoughts on everything that's been said. Now, the stigma part is huge. As a person with chronic pain, people look at me, they do not see anything physically wrong with me, yet my body can't, I can't pick up a bag of potatoes. without feeling pain. That being said, I can phone my doctor and say, my pain is bad, and what can you help me with? You know, and that's where also lies a problem, that it's so easy for me to phone my doctor and say, my pain is bad, I need something else. You know, personally with my pain, I have tried things like diclofenac, meloxicam, duloxetine, naproxen, cyclobenzaprine, and been told I can get hydromorphine. And that one I've just said, you know, like, I cannot take those kinds of substances and still be a functioning person in society, you know. But at the same time, these drugs help me control my pain. And without them, I can't function at all. And I just want to sit in bed, you know, and not even move. And people look at it and say, well, wow, you're on a lot of different medication, you know. Have you tried acupuncture? You know, and it's the pain management part as a person in pain, and especially looking at people that are in the construction industry, a person in pain can be their own worst enemy in that whole stigma as to, I have a job and it needs to get done. And, you know, it also comes down to the person with the pain understanding their own limitations and advocating for themselves, you know, that they need help, or, you know, they need support. And a lot of people that are in pain might not be able to do those two things for themselves, and are just pushed through society to the point that, you know, that's where they're lost in the drug trade, or not drug trade, in the drug problem, where they're trying to self-medicate to fix their own problem because they're not being heard or helped.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about the stigma, kind of like what you were talking about, Trevor. Also, too, it's very common that individuals with chronic pain, like we've been talking about this effect on mental health, a huge effect on self-worth, self-confidence, self-esteem, and, you know, especially with what we've been talking about with the stigma and per se the toxic masculinity in the construction industry. You know, it really speaks to one of the drivers that we identified, which was actually our last one, and that was discrimination and abuse, or harassment and bullying. But most common is what we hear is this banter back and forth, kind of like what's common in male working groups, or just more, male dominated working groups. This banter back and forth can kind of just be seen as, is just what you do, just poking fun, but it's also been termed microaggression after microaggression. And eventually these will add up, and individuals may turn to substances or other means and other ways to cope with their mental pain and physical pain if there's no other way for them to cope.
Okay, so we have talked a lot about the barriers and things that need to be done to address this complex issue. I'm wondering if Colby and Grace, but also Trevor, if you could share what resources exist and what can healthcare providers do, and what can people in pain do as well to try to address this issue.
Yeah, I'd love to say, sorry, Grace. I just love to say one tool that I have helped and been a part of is the Live Plan B, which has a wonderful tool for people that are in pain to be able to go and work through different courses at their own time and hear from people like myself and other people that participated in it on how things they can do to be a more functioning person in society, or just to be able to work on their own pain relief and work on their own inner self. And it's a wonderful tool, and definitely one worth taking a look at.
So just quickly, I wanted to just share my screen. As a result of de novo's the findings of our research project, one of the resources that we actually developed as a way to address or mitigate some of the issues that we identified, like the discrimination and abuse and personal relations, mental health issues, all contributing to substance use and mental health issues in the trades. So this is a resource hub that de novo put together, and it's called youarenolongeralone.com. It was actually inspired by these individuals here. They're from one of the locals in one of the plumber, pipe fitter, and seam fitting locals in Ontario. So one of the main resources that de novo developed to address these concerns is this documentary. It's about a half-hour-long video, and it features a lot of de novo clients, a lot of leadership within the industry. We've got the Canadian president of the Ironworkers chapter on there, and so really geared towards the construction industry. And we talk a lot about a lot of things, but mainly shifting this culture to one of support, one of being open and not afraid to share how you feel. So this is a resource, the website, everyone can access this, even in BC. Feel free to use any of these resources on there. And we also have a couple, these are more specific to Ontario, but virtual toll-free numbers and information flyers that can be printed or used online. So that's a resource that de novo has put together that could be helpful in substance use and as well as chronic pain resources.
Yeah, and I'll quickly speak to a few things available. I mean, of course, I'm going to plug my own project, the Tailgate Toolkit project, for any employers within the industry who are looking to gain a bit more understanding when it comes to substance use, mental health, pain management. We do offer a course to leaders in the industry where we do talk about this. We discuss strategies to reduce stigma in the workplace, promote help seeking, and providing support, including that duty to accommodate peace and the importance of that. Now, with that said, I will always promote Pain BC. We have worked with you guys in our programming, even facilitating a part of that course I mentioned. Because you have all the tools. There's education, which is so key, especially for healthcare providers, to gain a better understanding of course, the impact of chronic pain, but also for people experiencing it, because one of the first steps to really moving forward and breaking that pain spiral is acceptance, and the further education provided, the better. In addition to that, the pain support line, Live Plan B, it's also a great place to see testimonials from people with lived experience, right? Because when it comes to breaking down stigma, I always break it kind of into 5 parts. You got to reflect on your own views. You have to educate yourself. You got to expose yourself to people with lived experience, change how you communicate, and take action. And with all that said, Pain BC provides some excellent resources. So in addition to that, all I can say for folks who are living with chronic pain, when it comes to the workplace, you do, in many regards, have to be your own advocate. When it comes to employers, many are very accepting, many are very informed and educated, but many aren't. And you do have to step in, you do often have to self-disclose that you are experiencing pain. Or for those who may be experiencing substance use, this also goes for you. Both are protected. You can receive accommodations, get the support you need, and ultimately have a much more fruitful relationship with your employer and your workplace for both parties. We've talked about how pain, substance use, these things can really impact safety. This is something that we all in the industry want to ensure is present. Safety is key. We all want to protect each other. And this is something that we're just all experiencing together as we move forward. So with that said, if you are in the construction industry, don't know where exactly you are, maybe you'll benefit from de novo services. There's also the construction industry rehabilitation plan, and you may have some benefits through your employment assistance plan or other resources in the community. And if you are looking for resources when it comes to mental health, substance use, or harm reduction, again, please visit our website. We do have resources listed for BC.
Thank you all so much. I've put the links in the chat so you can check them out afterwards. And now we have time for Q&A. So if you have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A tab, which is located at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. And we'll try to get through as many as we can before 1 p.m. And I won't read out the names of the question askers. So don't worry, it will be anonymous. We'll just wait a couple seconds while people are frantically writing their questions, I'm sure. Yeah, in the meantime, for the panelists, was there anything that we didn't touch on today that you wanted to comment on?
I guess one thing I wanted to mention, something that we often see, especially when we talk about the drug toxicity crisis, is we often consider this an issue that predominantly impacts the unhoused community. Often when we talk about it, say in the context of construction or any other population group, it's very easy to distance ourselves from it and say, this is happening to the other. This is happening to a much more visible population group. When the truth is, over 70% of toxic drug poisonings in BC, and I'm speaking only BC stats, that's all I know, they happen in a private residence. So these are members of our community, colleagues, coworkers, friends, people we know. 69% of people who die due to drug poisoning used alone. And that is because of stigma. That is because we still continue to have a lot of judgment, criticisms, and we aren't putting out enough awareness and education. So that's all I just want to say, a quick point about stigma, because often we forget these points. This is happening for all of us.
Thank you. Yes, a very important point. Okay, so we have a couple of questions that have come in. So the first one, someone asks, or rather they say, thank you so much for this heartbreaking and informative panel. One thing I wondered about is the impact on families and resources for family and friends. I also wonder what kind of supports are available to help people self-advocate. I think, yeah, anybody can respond to that.
I have a point about the resources for family. There's an incredible organization that has now reached across our country, and it's called Moms Stop the Harm. Now, for those family members who may be grieving or maybe struggling with supporting a family member who is experiencing substance use, they have 2 support groups that are incredible. Now, this organization is made up entirely of moms and other family members of people that unfortunately were lost. But they have 2 support groups. One is called Holding Hope, which is for folks who are continuing to support someone else. And the other is called Healing Hearts, if unfortunately you have lost somebody. So incredible support groups for those individuals. When it comes to self-advocacy, if we're speaking to chronic pain, I think Live Plan B has some great resources for folks going through that, but I don't know if I could best speak to that point.
I can kind of touch a little bit on to advocacy, more so in terms of substance use than I can chronic pain. But something that we also found, or that I hear very commonly from our clients here at De Novo, is that one, they had no idea that De Novo existed, and two, they didn't know that De Novo was free for them. And so the biggest issue is the lines of communication are not getting passed all the way down. There's some kind of disconnect there in that people don't know that there are services and there are resources and there is help available most often through EAP programs or MAP programs and different benefits and services that employers and or unions can offer to people. I'm not super familiar with how it works in BC, but I do know that oftentimes in Ontario, the union reps and the business associates from the employer and union associations, they're fantastic. They're very knowledgeable and can point you in the right direction if that is something that you need more information on.
Yeah, and people are asking kind of if there exists a kind of a similar organization to De Novo in BC. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think Vicky was saying when we met earlier that the construction industry rehabilitation plan is kind of the comparable. Okay, so I put the link to the chat, or sorry, the link to that in the chat, and just confirming. So De Novo is only for Ontario.
Yes, yeah, it's so we also serve the family members of our unionized construction members. So if there was a construction worker living in Ontario and they had a family member living in BC, that's happened a few times where we've had clients from outside provinces and they're still able to access our services.
Okay, and do either of you, or maybe Colby, you would know, for the one in BC, is it only unionized construction workers or anybody in the industry?
My understanding is that it's unionized.
Okay, great. So we have a lot of questions coming in. This is fantastic. Someone asks, as someone who works in healthcare educating folks on harm reduction in a few different communities, who would I contact about reaching out to the construction industry within those communities?
Well, you could reach out to the local regional construction association. We have a number across the province, including the Northern Regional Construction Association, Southern Interior, Vancouver, and Vancouver Island. So they'll have a whole membership that can get in touch. Now, they do work with us, so you could also reach out to me. We may be able to make some connections happen there. Additionally, because we work with our members through the RCAs, who are often non-unionized, I'd say if you are looking to provide some education towards some unions, to reach out directly to them. I will say I've had mixed success myself, just in terms of lines of communication, but I would say that would be a great point. Also, I think Vicky over at the Construction Industry Rehabilitation Plan would have some great insights for you.
Awesome. And any insights in Ontario, Grace?
Yeah, it would be about the same things. To be very honest with you, De Novo is one of those numbers that we tell people to call for these kinds of things because we do work with a lot of different union locals. I believe that we now have over 80 contributing unions and employers that pay into De Novo. So normally we're the first point of contact, but like Colby said, the unions and or employer associations, they a lot of the times will have a lot of the information themselves. And I was also going to mention Vicky. She was very knowledgeable the other day.
Great. Okay, this is a bit more of a healthcare provider question. But any thoughts on this would be great from any of you. So the person says, I have several patients who have difficulty accepting their mental illnesses and their current reduced functional level of chronic pain. And they decline accepting help, counseling, treatment for their mental illnesses, but are only hoping for the improvement of their pain. Any thoughts on this? I guess kind of getting over that kind of maybe mental barrier or blocks between kind of understanding connections between mental illness or mental health and chronic pain, and encouraging help-seeking behavior.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in on that one, just because,
Please.
being that I've been there myself, and I mean, it's a very personal battle that these people are facing. And even for me, I struggle with it on a daily basis. It took me literally years to finally accept the fact that I went through like 2 years of physiotherapy. And even at the end of that, was very mad, very angry, did not want to accept the fact that my pain was mine, and it will always be mine, and it will always be there. And that journey that these other people also are going through, it's sad to say that they have to come to the harsh reality on their own, and hopefully not fall victim to the substance abuses, to where, that escape of getting away from your pain and then coming back to the reality. I'm still there, every day, you wake up and it's there. And all of these things that we have mentioned, for the tailgate toolkit, to Life Plan B, to, these people have to get there on their own. It's that old saying of, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And it really is a personal battle that, unfortunately, you can throw as much help as you can at some people. And I was there and did it for years and refused to accept it until now. And now I will advocate and tell people that, it took me years to get to where I am, to be able to talk about being in chronic pain and tell people that it's not the end of your life. You just have to figure out now how to live it, and, enjoy it and not give up on it. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Trevor. Any thoughts, Grace or Colby?
Oh, are you good?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, as Trevor was talking, I had a thought that, I can, of course, speak more so to substance use, but similar to chronic pain, recovery and substance use and recovery in your physical health, it's not linear. It is okay to ask for help, and it does not mean, it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. So one of the biggest things that is helpful in addiction recovery is support systems, and reaching out for help and talking to those people in your life that you love and trust, and that you can depend on, whether it be, you need help doing things, or you need to accommodate, or even at work, you need to have accommodations made for people living with chronic pain. So like Colby said earlier, we are all in this together. It is our industry, and we are all here for each other. We need to address the issue collectively.
Excellent. And just to add to that, I mean, something Ari, you said in the beginning is, we need a multimodal response to chronic pain, right? And it's so inherent in so many of us to just want the quick fix to the problem that I see presenting right now. I'm in pain. I want to not be in pain. It takes so much more to recognize, and it takes education and awareness and hearing from people who've been through it, like Trevor, that it's a multi-faceted approach to address the whole person. It is coming to accept it. It is recognizing the impact of our mental health on our physical health, and also incorporating, it's bio, it's psycho, social, and spiritual. We have to put in a lot of work in all facets of who we are to come to that point.
And just as we were talking, I remembered that Pain BC did a webinar in January with an organization called CAPSA. They're also a really great resource. They focus a lot around the combating the stigma of substance use disorders. And we did a webinar looking at the intersection of chronic pain and substance use. So I put the link there. Please do check that out if you're interested in learning more. It was a really great presentation. I think we have time for just two more quick questions. I think, Colby, you might have mentioned this earlier, but someone asks, when looking at the BC stats of those working at time of death from overdose, do you know more about what types of construction industries they were working in? Basically, are there some professions within the industry that are at higher risk?
No, unfortunately, BC Coroner Service doesn't break it down too much. So they've categorized it before as trades, construction, forestry. At other times, they've lumped in heavy equipment operation as well. Anecdotally, every single trade that I've spoken to has pointed at another trade. You know, so there are stories within the industry. However, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's one area at more risk. Truthfully, we're seeing it quite broadly.
Makes sense. And the last question, do any of you know about any Indigenous specific resources on this topic? Maybe do either De Novo or Tailgate Toolkit have any resources, or do you know of any out there that we can recommend to folks?
The one that I'm aware of that is on De Novo's website. It's a national one. I believe it's called Wellness Canada. It's a hotline for Indigenous people to call, and you can speak with someone in native languages and for support over the phone. I think that De Novo has a couple more Indigenous specific ones on its website, but I can't think of them off the top of my head right now.
There's a crisis line called the Ku'us crisis line, which we often suggest for folks who are looking for Indigenous specific support. Additionally, the First Nations Health Authority does have resources available. Both they can provide naloxone kits. They also have support lines, including a doctor of the day program. I know there are more out there, and I do apologize for not having more information off the top of my head. However, I would recommend the First Nations Health Authority is likely to have more supports listed.
Thank you all. Yeah, someone says in the chat that First Nations Health Authority is a great resource. Okay, we have come to the end of our time together. Thank you all so much for your time and attention today and your fantastic questions. I hope you've walked away with a little bit more information about this topic, as well as some resources and actions that you can take. We just really appreciate your time, especially so close to the holiday break for many folks. So thank you all. As I mentioned, the recording will be up probably in the new year. But until then, we hope you take care, and please do, before you log off today, take a minute to complete our survey. It should pop up when you log out of the webinar today. So thank you again to our three panelists, and thank you to Vicki Waldron as well, who couldn't be here today. Yeah, just sending all of our love. This has been such an honor to have this conversation, so just really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having me as well. And it's so great to meet all of you on the panel.
Nice meeting everyone as well. Thank you.
And lots of thanks coming in through the Q&A. All right, folks, take care. Have a good rest of your week.